Anthony Amore, Republican candidate for state auditor, is our guest. Let's go on the record. Taking the middle lane in a state GOP that's turned hard to the right. Could the Charlie Baker playbook work in this statewide race? The candidate's here to tell his story.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. Hi there, everybody. I'm Ben Cimino alongside News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Ed, lucky him, he's out in San Francisco with the Celtics. We are pleased, though, to have Anthony Amore with us on this Sunday morning. He's a candidate for state auditor on the Republican ticket, an internationally recognized expert on security issues. He worked for the Department of Homeland Security, leading efforts to rebuild systems at Logan Airport following 9/11. He now works as security director at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and has written best-selling books on art theft and fraud. A candidate for Secretary of State in 2018, he holds degrees from the University of Rhode Island and the Harvard Kennedy School. Anthony Amore, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Especially on such a gorgeous Sunday.
Indeed.
So your resume tells us that you know a lot about art thefts and airport security. Why would those skills help you become a good state auditor? And why did you decide that this time you were going to run for state auditor instead of Secretary of State, which is what you did 4 years ago?
Good questions. Well, first I'd say for the last 30 years I've worked as an investigator and as a security expert combined. And that experience means that as an investigator, I look at the facts, I see where they lead me, I dig into stories, and I get answers. The other part, as a security professional, means assessing and doing audits of security programs, whether it's the public sector or the private sector, and really getting in to see if performance is where it's supposed to be in really key critical issues. So it lends itself nicely to the role of the auditor. In terms of why I decided to get into this race this time, I look at, I've raised a family in Massachusetts. I know how expensive it is. I've seen my daughters go through college. It's really, excuse the term, but taxing to families. I think it's really important that the state have an auditor who can be a good custodian of the tax dollars that we're required to pay.
Well, because you ran for Secretary of State 4 years ago, some might come to the conclusion that you're shopping for a public office. Is that not true?
No, it's not. In fact, I think when I was here last, as a matter of fact, I don't expect the viewers to remember, but the key to my candidacy was transparency. And when the auditor decided she wasn't going to run again, and you look at the auditor's office, and transparency is a key to it, letting the public know what's going on behind the doors in state government and where their money is going, and if there's waste, fraud, or abuse, is really a key function that I've done my entire career, leading large organizations, doing this, managing people who do it, and the opportunity to tell people how the government's performing is something that I'm just perfectly suited for.
Well, you're a member of the GOP, and as you well know, the former president, Donald Trump, holds a strong grip still on a good chunk of this party. Do you consider yourself a Trump Republican, and what's your assessment of his 4 years in the White House?
Well, no, I don't consider myself a Trump Republican. I've made that very clear, and that doesn't always benefit me, but I'm just being honest. I think, though, that his 4 years in terms of economics, I think it's hard to argue that they weren't vastly superior to what we're seeing now. I'm very concerned about the economy.
But the folks at the top of your party, at least at the state level here in Massachusetts, Jim Lyons, Jeff Diehl, who's running for governor, who's going to lead the ticket, they do consider themselves strong supporters of President Trump. So do you agree with their opinion? No,
I'm running my own campaign. What Chairman Lyons or Jeff Diehl think or what they're doing, I respect them, but it has nothing to do with my campaign and what I believe and what I represent. I'm running a very moderate campaign because that's the sort of Republican I am. And I mean, I've made no bones about that. I model my political philosophy after what Governor Baker has shown to be effective here for 8 years.
So you're not expecting any help or any support from the leadership, the party's leadership, is that fair to say?
I haven't asked for any. I'd be loath to turn down help or support from people who want to help my campaign. But no, I'm certainly not seeking the endorsement of the former president.
So one of the big issues facing our country, again, after especially what's been happening in the past week or so, is gun control. President Biden addressed the nation last Thursday. Do you believe tighter federal background checks are needed and should be mandated for all the states by Congress?
Well, what I believe is that what we do here in Massachusetts is effective. I strongly support the gun laws of Massachusetts. I strongly support the red flag laws in Massachusetts.
Should other states be doing what we're doing here?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, and as auditor, I think you have a unique opportunity to make sure that people are working together properly. In my career, I've worked with a lot of the chiefs of police around the Commonwealth, and they have a major role in protecting us when it comes to gun violence. I think we do it well here. I think other states should absolutely emulate it, and I think the auditor has a role in making sure that these programs, public safety programs, work effectively.
As a security expert, I assume you own a gun?
I do.
And does Massachusetts need to update its laws when it comes to concealed carry?
Well, I will tell you that it's not easy to get a concealed carry license. I have one. I would say that it does vary town to town, which can be disconcerting for people who move from one city to another and see that the chief has so much say in it, but I think it works. And I've lived in cities and towns where there are tight controls in this, and you can't argue with the results.
So in other words, you don't have to have one uniform sort of like law as far as concealed carry is concerned in Massachusetts?
I think the law is working well, and I think the chiefs of police are to be commended for the job they've done.
All right, another big issue always in the news here in Massachusetts is the MBTA. We just had this past week another Green Line collision and derailment. A lot of controversy in this system, everything from safety and security to finances. But unlike some other state agencies, the auditor's office is specifically charged to investigate and audit the T. Yet an entire audit of the system, the entire system hasn't been done in decades. So what would your approach be to trying to get the T back on the right track?
Well, we've seen a lot in our research during this campaign that a lot of the state government goes unaudited. The auditor herself said about 30% of the agencies that are supposed to be audited are not. That will change when I'm auditor. I would say that in terms of the MBTA, you have to look at the key functions and ensure that internal controls are in place for all of the key functions. I've spent a substantial portion of my career protecting the safety and security of people using public transit, and I plan to do that as auditor.
This is, at this point, though, Charlie Baker's T. Has he done a good enough job of improving the system?
Oh, yeah, I think the governor's done a great job in investing in the MBTA. We have to remember what it was like before he came into office and the things that he's fought to enact at the T. I think he's done a superior job.
2 years ago, the current auditor, Suzanne Bump, did an audit on the security issues at the MBTA, and she only released part of that audit because she says some of it was too sensitive to be released. As a security expert yourself, did she do the right thing? And if you are auditor, would you release the entire report to let folks know what's going on security-wise at the T?
Well, that's a great question, and one of the problems is I don't know what I don't know, so I don't know what she withheld. But I would look. The first thing is people's the public safety, and making sure that you're not releasing information that could put people at risk. On the other hand, too, there's a real danger in overclassifying things, keeping too much from the public. So I would always err towards the release of information to the public because transparency is the goal here.
All right, your party's leadership nationally and here in Massachusetts has taken issue with some might say modernization of voting laws. Some might say they're too progressive, new voting laws. We're talking about, of course, same-day registration, mail-in voting, which, of course, exploded in its use across the country in the pandemic. Where do you stand on increasing ballot access?
I think it's the more that you can get people engaged in voting, the better, of course. However, there are real problems, I think, with the system, the voting system in Massachusetts, and the key one that I've made an issue of since my last campaign is that our primary happens so late in the season, abnormally late.
Would you move it to the spring?
Oh, absolutely. So if you're, it's not the case with my candidacy, but when you look at someone who's running against a primary, say there's a primary on the Democratic side, the other two candidates are getting all of the media attention all the way until Labor Day. Then the opponent comes on scene with about a month before early voting starts. It's a real impediment to change in government and bringing in new blood. I think we need to look at moving back the primary date. I think that would be a great thing for our democracy.